Hey guys, Scott Paltos down at the Sport and Speed Institute with Justin Kavanaugh. We're going to talk about the bench press test today, whether it be the 225 or 185 for high school athletes. It's a test that's utilized and really performed when the athlete's getting ready for either the NFL Combine, their pro day, or sometimes with the high school athletes, they have a combine or some type of test at one of the universities when they go for a camp. The test is not the end-all be-all for football players. It's really used as a relative example for strength, but what they've seen is over the years, that test, okay, is not just about pure strength. It's about the work ethic that some of these athletes have and what they've done prior to this test. So the cool part about the 225 or 185 test is it's not always going to be the best or the strongest or the fastest or even the best football player, but sometimes it's going to show you who can really work out in the weight room, who puts the time in for training, and who puts time in for smart training. We're going to talk about some of the technical aspects of the bench press. Most people believe the bench press is just a test of upper body strength, but in all reality, it's actually a test of full body strength if the athlete has the proper technique. They need to make sure that when they do the bench test, that really first, that the bench is set up in the right position for them. You want to make sure that the J-cups are not too high, and you want to make sure the J-cups aren't too low. Sometimes at some tests, or whether it be pro day or combine, you're not really going to be able to determine how high it is, but you need to be able to adjust to it. So that's number one. Make sure that the setup is right in the rack or on the power rack or wherever you're going to use it. After that, you want to make sure the athlete keeps their butt on the bench. This is a huge aspect that you lose in a lot of weight rooms. A lot of athletes will start picking up their hips. So the technique that we're going to go over with a couple of our athletes today are going to show you the ability to keep those hips down but still utilize your legs. The setup is critical because, again, it's not just an upper body test, it's a full body test. So you want to make sure that the athlete utilizes their legs and upper back in the movement. The shoulders need to be retracted and let down and digging into the bench. It's not just going to be lifting the bar, it's actually going to be pushing away from the bar. That's a second aspect that a lot of athletes forget about. It's much easier to push away from something than it is to just push something up. So make sure that athlete concentrates on pushing that bar away. Another huge and critical factor is making sure when their legs are into the ground that they are driving into the ground, whether it be heel or toe, depending on the two different setups that we show you in a few minutes. Make sure those legs are digging into the ground and make sure those legs are pushing everything away from that body. The other thing is head positioning. You'll hear some athletes have high head or low head or their head's resting. It really doesn't matter, and sometimes it's the athlete's preference. Some people will teach it a certain way. Again, we'll show you both techniques and we'll show you how both of them can be utilized for the athlete. Number 4, make sure the athlete that you're working with, you know the size and ability that they have. What I mean by that is limb length. Limb length will determine a lot of where the grip will be and where the setup will be on the bench. So make sure you take that into account. And 5th, the bench press needs to be done smart. Whenever you train for this test or whenever you utilize the techniques here, make sure the athlete does not put tension in the wrong spots. Make sure the athlete does not overcompensate in certain areas. You need to be a focus point. You need to have a focus point as a coach to work with them. You cannot just let them grab the bar and go. There are a lot of aspects that when we work with these athletes in a few minutes, you'll see that are very important and critical. We're going to talk a little bit about the training. We're going to get into further aspects and further detail about it, but what we need to make sure is that when we have athletes, we know the duration of time we have to work with them. Whether it be a career in a collegiate level or high school level, whether it be a combine prep or pro day prep where we only have a few weeks, or sometimes even for a high school athlete, we may only have 1 or 2 weeks to transition out of season or in season into one of these tests. So you need to make sure when we go over these training principles in a few minutes that you understand and utilize them as best you can. Remember, we're building an athlete. We're not just building an efficient bencher. We're not just building a bench press tester. We're trying to build an efficient athlete. When we talk about the training, you'll see how it correlates and crosses over into all the other tests that these athletes get picked on and used for. Guys, we're back to talk about the technique for the bench press test. I picked Sam and Ronnie over here because of their limb length and their size. A lot of athletes have a lot of trouble being able to adjust to the bench press test. Dudes like Sammy who are just big, massive, and strong, They just try to move the weight as fast as they can. Ronnie over here will always talk about how long it is and how long it takes for him to press. Both these athletes are kind of put at a negative. They're both pretty strong to begin with, but let's make sure we utilize their strength as well as their limb length to their advantage in this test. We're gonna dive right in with Sam and the technique for the bench. Sam's gonna lay back down on the bench for me. His legs are gonna be nice and wide. He's gonna have a good base with his legs. There are a couple ways to do it. Like we said, he can tuck those legs underneath him a little bit more. Can you bring those legs back for me, Sam? We can tuck those legs and almost create a natural arch, but we wanna be smart. We don't wanna put too much stress on the athlete's back right now. So we're gonna keep his legs out in front of him a little bit. Feet are gonna be driven into the ground like we talked about. Those knees are gonna be pushed out to create tension through his lower body, through his hips and his glutes. Remember, your hips and your glutes are two of the strongest parts of your body, so why not utilize them? The third aspect that I wanna make sure is when Sammy sets up, just grab the bar for me, Sammy, you don't have to take it off. His shoulder blades are gonna be retracted back and pulled together. We wanna make sure that when he takes this bar off, let's take the bar off, that he stays nice and tight with that upper back. These legs are driving into the ground. He's gonna bring the bar path down to about his sternum. He's gonna think about pushing that bar away and keeping those shoulders retracted back the whole time. Again, this was the concept I talked about of pushing away from that bar and digging himself into the bench. Just give me a couple more reps so we can see that those shoulders. Good, those shoulders are pushed back, those lats are engaged, these legs are driving hard into the ground. Again, this is just with the bar, but at the same time, working this form and working this technique is really gonna help the athlete out in the long run when it comes to the test. Back with our second athlete. We're gonna talk about Ronnie's limb length right here. So if he takes his arm and puts it all the way out in front of him, look at the length of that arm. Look at his wingspan. A lot of athletes are gonna have trouble with the bench test because they're gonna feel like they're traveling too far. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna adjust him so it works for him. Drop down for me, Ronnie. Same thing, I like the wider leg span. I like the wider leg drive with those toes straight and those heels out a little bit. So let's turn these toes straight for me, Ronnie. There you go. His knees are out again, just like we did with Sammy. He's gonna grab the bar. He's gonna take a little wider of a grip. So I want him to go maybe ring finger on that ring for me. Nothing else changes here. Everything else is gonna stay the same. We just adjusted his grip a little bit. Remember, we wanna practice and find what grip is best for us, but the same concept. He's gonna pull this bar off. He's gonna try to pull these shoulders back nice and hard. What you'll notice is, usually when the limb length is a little bit longer, the torso is gonna be a little bit longer as well. So they're gonna be able to arch a little bit more naturally and now shorten that range of motion. Do me a favor, Ronnie, straighten out your shoulders as flat as they can go and push that bar up as high as you can right now. That's where he would be if his back was flat. Now, if I retract those shoulders back, pull them back underneath you, we bring that bar path here, we now saved about 3 or 4 inches on that path for the bar. So now when he brings this bar down to his sternum and he drives back up, he's gonna come up to my hand, those shoulders are still retracted. Everything is still, again, like we've talked about, pushing away. His legs are driving in, his natural arch is here, there's no pressure on the lower back, he's driving with his glutes as well, and now he's shortened that range to maximize the issue with the limb length. The cool part about working with athletes for a short period of time is you can make major adjustments with them when it comes to this test, as well as the other combine tests, and pro day tests, and camp tests. What I will show you is when you start to get a little bit more experienced in this lift, and you start to get a little bit more experienced, or you have athletes working for a longer period of time, you can help make this test that much easier for them by, again, like I said, changing the range of motion, teaching them how to press away and dig into the bench. I've been lucky enough that I've been a pretty good bench presser my whole life, including this test where I was able to pound out about 38 reps in my worst. This is a great example of how you can adjust this and make it work for yourself.